Good morning, everyone. Morning, John. Morning, Abhishek.
Morning.
Morning.
Let's wait just a few more seconds for the people to join and then we'll get started. All right. Let's get started. Thank you very much, everyone, joining this online live discussion for this newly launched end-to-end analytics product by Microsoft called Microsoft Fabric. And let me quickly introduce the panel. Along with myself, I have John Signal and Abhishek, and we all work for Cluster Reply. We are architects on Azure. John Signal is one of our principal architects with Cluster Reply. He oversees all of the architects and the practice of the architects. And Abhishek is also one of our architects with integration practice, and he works on many of our clients for Azure integrations. And let's quickly introduce Cluster Reply for those who are new to Cluster Reply. So we are part of the Reply group. Cluster Reply is expert in providing Azure consultancy services. And along with many other services, these are some of the key services that we provide as part of Cluster Reply's deliveries. We do Power Platform and business applications like Dynamics 365. Microsoft integrations is one of our key services, whether be it ESBs or APIs. We do a lot of enterprise integrations using Azure and other Microsoft services. Application innovation is a key service that we provide for many of our clients who needs to modernize their applications using Azure Cloud. Data engineering is one of the practices that I lead with Cluster Reply, and this topic that we are discussing, it falls under one of the data engineering services that we provide, which includes end-to-end enterprise level analytics services. And along with that, we also offer a lot of cloud infrastructure and security services. This caters to almost end-to-end Azure applications and services. We Cluster Reply. We are Microsoft partners for over 2 decades in the UK, and recently we have also achieved the partnership, and advanced specializations on many different topics. And all of these six services that you see here, Azure Cloud, Data, and AI, we are one of the very few companies in the UK who have achieved all of these specializations. So that's about cluster reply. And without any further ado, let's get started on today's topic. I hope all of you are able to see the screen that I'm sharing right now. Uh, I'll move on to the next slide and let's discuss why do we need another analytics service from Microsoft, right? Because we already had Power BI, we already had Synapse Analytics. Why did we need yet another end-to-end analytics service? So if you look at it, as is the current standard or current services that's available. So this is the web page that shows all of the Azure products with different categories. So in the analytics space, you can see that we've had many different services, right? For example, Synapse Analytics, for if you need large processing of data, you need enterprise grade analytics. You used Synapse. You use Databricks for when you needed any Apache Spark based processing. You had Azure Purview for your governance, for any kind of movement of data or enrichment of data. We had Azure Data Factory, and all of these many different services needed to be stitched together in order for you to deliver an end-to-end analytics service. And this involved many different teams, many different interfaces. You needed to provide securities for each of these services, and governance was a separate thing for everything. So, in order to streamline all of these analytic services, Microsoft came up with this umbrella service called Microsoft Fabric. Now, what happens with Fabric is that it's not all of these new services. These are the existing services that we've been using so far. Some of them you may have heard, for example, Power BI or Data Factory, Synapse Analytics, data engineering, warehousing, and then data science services. But then Microsoft put all of them together under one package, one umbrella service called Microsoft Fabric. And there is also one of the new services which being introduced called Data Activator, which we'll look into in more details later on. And now, behind the scenes, there is this new one lake concept, which is a data lake, but it's a centralized data storage layer that powers all of your services under Microsoft Fabric umbrella. So what Microsoft is essentially trying to do here is provide a unified product experience. Otherwise, for Synapse, you would have to log into the Synapse Studio. For Power BI, you had a different UI to deal with. For Data Factory, you would go to a different URL, different portal to build your pipelines. But instead of that, now you have everything packaged as one product and one experience. The compute and storage as well is unified now. So you don't have to, individually provide compute for your SQL pools, right? If you needed Spark, you don't have to individually now do that. All of this is now unified under this one umbrella. The governance and security, which is one of the very critical parts when it comes to adopting any new technology for any large organization, right? Now that is also unified. So you provide one security, you have one compute, one storage, and one experience. That's the key message that Microsoft is giving with Fabric. Let's look at all of these services in little more detail. Here comes your unified interface, right? So all of these 7 services that comes under Fabric, you can access all of them right from the one UI. SaaS is another keyword that you would hear a lot with Fabric, because this is now a software as a service like interface. You don't have to log into different portals. You don't have to download any tools. You can use everything right in one screen. So you can essentially align your team within a single source of truth. You can unify your data from different sources, different platforms within single centralized repository, and then you can start building on top of that. So that's the unified interface. Next, let's look at the most hyped word that we've been recently hearing a lot: AI powered, right? Everything is being AI powered.
Everything's being AI powered.
Yeah. When we heard Copilot with GitHub long time ago, I mean, obviously, it seems like long time ago because now Copilot is coming in everything. I mean, we're seeing Copilot in Microsoft Office applications, right? It's there in Bing as a different name, but essentially it's that open AI services. It's the language models that you can communicate. You can ask questions in your normal language, and then it would actually do the job for you. It would give you the answers, would even write code for you. So Copilot is now being integrated right inside this fabric and all of its services. Now, not all the services have Copilot enabled right now, but eventually they would come for all of these services, and you would have one similar experience wherever you go. So in this case, you can ask Copilot to write a SQL query in as humanly language possible, and it would actually do that for you because it already has the context of all the data that you're already working with right now. Next, let's look at the data engineering side of things. Now, Synapse is one of the largest chunk of services that's being implemented inside Fabric, right? So, and data engineering is one of the key part of Synapse. If you've used Synapse, if you've implemented Synapse, you know that when you're dealing with large chunk of data from coming from many different sources, you end up doing a lot of data engineering so that you can actually use that data for the reporting or analytics purpose. Now all of those engineering capabilities are right within the fabric. So you can transform your data at scale. You can provide your data engineers with the experience that supports data analysis and optimized collaboration. Next, let's look at the data warehouse from Synapse that again comes into the fabric, right? Now, data warehouse is not a new concept. It's been around for ages, and Synapse offered a lot of great capabilities for data warehouse. And now all of those capabilities are available within Microsoft Fabric. You can enable all of your team to start looking into all of your data right in that one unified interface. They can analyze your entire data estate. You can gain the industry leading SQL performance because data warehouse is all about having that large SQL pools behind the scenes that you can use to run large queries that need a lot of computing and storage power. That's all available with Synapse inside Fabric now. Another key portion from Synapse that comes into Fabric is the data science. Now, whether the organization adopts data scientist or not, they would inevitably need to use some sort of data science if they even think about implementing smallest level of AI capabilities in any of their business functions, right? Now, with this Synapse data science and Azure AI and Copilot, you can build specialized AI models very quickly. You can create predictive AI models at scale. You can boost collaboration. You can do a lot of training of your models right here in the same experience within Microsoft Fabric. You can create and manage a lot of your learning models. Um, Next, one of the other services from Synapse that's being imported into Fabric is the real-time analytics. Now, we all know that Synapse is very good at reading data from streams and IoT devices and provide you the real-time analytics, right? And all of those good things are now also part of the Microsoft Fabric. So if you have any real-time data coming in, if you're, for example, managing your site traffic or any transactions, any IoT devices, all of your data you can again use within Microsoft Fabric, just as you did with Synapse. So these were the four key services from Synapse. Next, let's look at the Power BI service. Now, Power BI is not new, and it looks like the entire idea of coming up with Fabric is built on Power BI, because if you look at that interface, it's very much similar to Power BI. If your organization is already using Power BI, then it's likely that you've already started seeing Fabric icons there. uh, your tenant might needs to, some your IT might need to enable for that tenant. But if you're using Power BI, you would already feel at home. But what's next with Power BI is that you can now start using Copilot. You can ask Power BI to potentially come up with, any sort of analysis. You can ask, and it would build reports for you in real time. So you can actually help everyone within your organization create engaging data reports. It can easily translate insights into visual reports. So you already have the data from everything that we've just seen from Synapse and data engineering and data science, but this is where you actually get insights into the visual form so that your business users can start using it. And because this is also with Fabric, it comes with native integration with Microsoft 365. You can now enable all of your business users, no matter where they are. They don't even need to come to the Fabric interface. They can start using the data from your tenant into their Excel or their Microsoft Teams. They can even start seeing their reports in Microsoft Teams, right? So this is really a great way. Power BI was already good, really good at that. You could already export a lot of reports. You could, use these reports in many different places, like your PowerPoint slides and all. But this takes it to the next level with the help of AI and Microsoft 365 integration. Next, let's look at the data factory. Now, this is very similar to data engineering, but with data factory, you can ingest data from any type of sources. When you have to process billions of rows, you have to manipulate them, you have to enrich the data, you have to merge data from many different sources. This is where you easily integrate all of your data sources. You can streamline your data ingestion using data factory. Now you don't have to provision them separately. It's all available within that same unified interface of Microsoft Fabric. And the new service that they have introduced is called Data Activator. Now this is not yet available as a preview. It's still in private preview, so we don't know a lot of details about it. But based on what they have mentioned during the build conference and their event, we can safely say that activity is going to generate events, or it would trigger other flows based on certain conditions that you can then configure within your data, right? So you can instantly respond to new data and insights through the system of detection, right? Excuse me. So when you're dealing with any particular set of data, without writing any code, you can monitor the data, and then you can trigger actions when your business conditions are met. For example, you can send an email when your sales revenue reaches certain point, right? Similarly, you can send Teams notification. Let's say if you're detecting some IoT devices, if some anomaly happens there, you can create, or you can trigger a Teams notification. So a lot of these things were available previously, but you needed to use many different services,
Mm.
which now seems like everything would be available within one single umbrella. So this is one of the new services, and we look forward to knowing more as it becomes available to preview and to other
Yeah.
people.
And this is the one that's really going to take analytics to that next level.
Yeah,
Every other part of what we've already been talking about automates the generation of insight. Activator, we're expecting to start automating the response to insight. It's going to make it so that you can implement processes that automatically respond to key data, key analytics, KPIs that previously would have been just some sort of someone going and looking at a report and saying, okay, that means we need to do this. This is going to start automating even that response to your analytics and insight.
absolutely. Yeah, it would basically save a lot of time just creating those triggers or looking at those values and then coming up what to do next.
Mm,
You can do a lot of those things out of the box. Yeah. So ultimately, I think Microsoft is reaching at that level where um, you focus on the business,
mm,
not building the systems. Building the system part would become so much smoother and easier experience for most people, that would allow you to now start focusing more on the business. So these are the key seven services that we've just looked into it. Um, what do you guys think of this new way of Microsoft packaging the existing services into one unified service?
For me, it's going to bring a new experience to the entire team. Maybe it's developer, business analyst, or business user. Everyone is going to have a new and wonderful experience. I will just start with reiterating few of the keywords you have mentioned, and I would like to touch base on the integration side, which I really feel is going to make a huge change with Microsoft Fabric. Like Microsoft is calling it as a unified data analytics platform. One
mm,
product, one experience, one architecture, one business model. Unified data store in data lake. Honestly, it covers a lot of different area like data engineering, science, data governance, all in one place. The seven workloads that's part of Fabric, uh, all these are since long there, but the way Microsoft has packaged and ship it as a SaaS capability, it's really wonderful. Now, if you look at current scenario where you want to use all these services in the solution, what are the tasks or the challenges a team face? Like you have to provision, you have to do data governance around it, you have to think about release mechanism, you have to like manage all these services in
mm,
some way, right? And it's not always possible for a single person or a team to be expert on all different areas of Synapse or Data Factory or Power BI, right? But what Fabric is trying to address here is where you have all these different services and you have to write them up, right? It was very complicated, as I just mentioned, but you may have been expert in Synapse Analytics or like data warehouse. You don't have to go and provision things, they are just available for you to use, right?
mm,
Right. No reinvention of wheel is required. I
Yeah,
mean, a lot of these products are already standard alone products, but what they are doing is they are bringing everything together in a real standardized way, which fantastic things for
yeah,
the end user.
yeah.
One key thing which I really think about when I work on any project, like usually we start discussing or bothering, what data do I have access to? Where the data stored? Do I have to provision any database or do I have to stand up any data before I start doing data processing, data movement, ETL, like integrating with the snaps, right? Data is integrated and stored in the open format, allowing one copy to be used to train machine learning models, visualize data, SQL queries on lake and data warehouse. So this one lake concept is really wonderful. It's wired all these seven workloads so integrated that it feel like everything is working on the same copy of data,
yeah.
no data moment.
Mm,
So that's really going to change the experience, and really it will I will say it will uh, scale like time to market to your solution quickly, like, and it will collaborate the team so closely, uh, like the business teams, the development team, or the analyst team, they all can work together at same time on the same copy of data, like without bothering about where the data reside and what data it is.
That's the beauty of it,
Yeah.
of having everything in that standard Delta Parquet format,
mm,
um, and then it's accessible to all the other services. So no need to copy data, no need to create replicas of the same data, and then again ensuring that they're all up to date. Now you're working with the same data without anyone worrying about whether I'm getting the latest set of data or not.
mm,
Yeah,
Like one can think of this one lake like in Microsoft 365, we have OneDrive, right? With all
Yeah,
of your all your application suites are integrated with the OneDrive. So this is the OneDrive for the Microsoft Fabric. That's a
yeah,
beauty.
Mm,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
if you've seen that video where they're showcasing that capability where you can install, I mean, you can, the native shell integration with Windows File Explorer. So it's actually your one lake, but you are accessing it right in your File Explorer, just like you do with your OneDrive. So
Right.
you don't need to download any data. You don't need to use a particular tool to access the data, but you can just, in your day-to-day life, in your business as usual, you can use your Windows computer, your File Explorer, to access everything from that data. You can even insert data right from there, and
Yeah.
it syncs up immediately. Yeah, that's amazing. So these are some of the really amazing features that comes up with this new service.
Yeah.
And the next step they took is the shortcuts. That's really amazing. Like it provide you connections or the connected to connect to any cloud storage like Azure storage, Data Lake Giant 2, or Amazon S3, or the Google Cloud. Like using those shortcuts connector, you can visualize the data without moving the data, right? And if the data is in the, suppose the open Parquet format, you can visualize those data as a table. You can query on that. And the beauty is you're not moving the data anywhere. It's still there. You're just virtually visualizing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, Andy has a really good point that Microsoft loves reusing these names. So if you end up Googling Microsoft Fabric, you might still go to the old page of Fabric services. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I think the interesting thing for me is the shifts that this sort of announcement from Microsoft kind of represents. Because for the last however long, and I've been using Azure for 12 years now, and Azure has always been providing discrete PaaS services and then moving into that infrastructure as a service model, so that IT pros can build exactly what their organization needs. The analogy we often use is Lego bricks. Microsoft has given us all the Lego bricks that we need to build, whatever we need to build, whatever complexity. It can be a simple website if all you need is Azure App Services, but you can also combine that app service with a whole load of background services that build a all singing, all dancing enterprise scale service to serve your business needs. What we're doing here, though, is if anyone's seen the Lego movie, you've got the fear of the Lego is the mighty Craggle. Microsoft are pre-craggling some of their services and releasing them as unified products. And it's not that they're taking the Lego bricks away. We don't need to fear the Craggle, but there's Microsoft are taking out some of the hard work, some of the Azure fundamentals that you need to learn to really make the most of these services, and just providing it in a way that business users, power users, people that know the data but might not know IT or Azure, they're making it in a way that these people can leverage and benefit from their innovation as well. It's a really interesting shift.
yeah, yeah. Um, would be interested to see what happens with the integration space, because
Yeah.
we've been hearing integration hub for last couple of build, maybe more than last couple.
Hmm.
So would be what do you think, John? I know you've been very closely following the integration hub things. We've seen events being more focused um, in the integration hub, but logic app standard functions, service bus. What do you think about it?
So I mean, we've been calling it out for quite a while now as one of the gaps in the Azure integration space. As we say, they've given us the Lego bricks to build what our customers need, for our customers to build what they need. But there hasn't been that unified space. So when Microsoft announced the integration hub a year or two ago, we're still looking to see exactly what it means. It was kind of pushed down on their roadmap a little bit, but I'm expecting to see, having seen Fabric, something very similar. I think there's going to be some sort of unified operation plane and some sort of interface that brings the different services together in a way that allows you to build a coherent integration solution without needing to know what all the individual connections need to be between those different services. Interestingly, one of the other things that's just been announced is a Visual Studio Code based new mapping tool that is now in public preview.
The data mapper.
Yeah, the data mapper, that's right. And because it runs in VS Code, that means that in theory, it should be runnable within the version of Visual Studio Code that you can run from GitHub that was announced last year at Build.
Yes.
So all of this starts to hint at the direction of travel, and I think we're really going to be looking at in another couple of years or so, finally that answer to the other iPaaSes, the other integration platforms as a service within an Azure context that we can start to encourage our customers toward using.
Yeah, yeah. And it also becomes complex from the licensing side of things, right? If we look at even for the integrations where we do a lot of work,
Yeah.
if you're using service bus, logic apps, and functions, and then if you had API management and some of the storage layers, and then we know how complex it can become for clients in future. And if someone left some of the services which were in dev or test, uncleaned, they can end up paying a lot.
Yeah. Azure pricing is an interesting one because you're right. It's one of those areas that can feel very scary. It can feel difficult to predict. The way I often talk about it is that it feels like a bug, but it's really a feature. If you know how to leverage the Azure pricing model, the consumption-based pricing model, actually you're able to optimize your costs, you're able to design your applications and your workloads in a way that scales automatically, and you pay exactly for what you use. But as you say, it can lead to excess costs, because if you don't understand the pricing model, if you don't understand that you can stand things up, take things down, pause it, resume it, etc., then you're paying for it all the time. And we have heard from some customers that what they really want is just a predictable single price. And Fabric is going to give people that in the data and analytics space. Hopefully, when it eventually comes, the integration hub will also begin to maybe provide that less flexible model, but that more predictable model that is sometimes easier to include in a business case.
Yeah, and if you paid attention to this provisioning the compute for, let's say, if you were running Databricks and if you needed Spark-based compute, um, in the earlier, I mean, if pre-Fabric world, you have to manually configure what type of compute you need, and then it would also take few minutes to warm up and actually launch that compute, right? Even in Data Factory, if you are using data flows, it actually launches that cluster behind the scene, which does take some time to warm up and load. Which what they're suggesting with Fabric is that you don't have to worry about provisioning that. It's already there, and you just start using it, kind of serverless type, right? And based on your consumption or your licensing tier, you'd be charged. And that's why I think you're seeing there are a lot of different capacity tiers in the licensing, right, John? Have you looked into the licensing side of things, John? What do you think?
I have, yeah. It's an interesting one. I think, as you were saying earlier, Fabric is based upon a foundation of Power BI. So from a licensing perspective, there's an element of that legacy still being represented. But there's a few building blocks to understand when you're trying to spec out what the licensing looks like for Fabric. First is the tenant. Every single user of Microsoft Fabric is going to need to have some sort of tenant provision. Now, you can have a single tenant for your whole business, or if you've got different areas of your business that have different cost centers, different budgets, etc., maybe different needs, then you can have multiple tenants as well. Next down from the tenant is the capacity, and these are the amount of compute resources that are allocated to your tenant. And you can have multiple, and maybe you should have multiple capacities per tenant. The way Microsoft talk about it is maybe you have a capacity for your finance department, you have a separate capacity for your marketing department, a separate capacity for your operations department, so that they have the ability to provision just the right amount of compute for their data and analytics needs without having that split across the whole organization. And then next one down from capacity, you have workspaces. And this is really where you're doing your work. Every user of Fabric will have a space called My Workspace, but you can also provision workspaces that allow you to share your artifacts across your capacity load within your tenant. The next one down then are the two different license types. So there's two types of licenses. You've got premium per user, which is pulling in Power BI, and this possibly begins to answer some of Andy's question there about how the licensing of Fabric works with Power BI using Microsoft 365 licensing. So these are using the shared organizational capacity, these premium per user license model, but it only provides partial access to Fabric. So you're using Fabric, but you're only really using the Power BI portion of Fabric. If you want to use all the goodness of Fabric, you're going to want to start getting into the capacity license type, which are a new range of SKUs within the Azure landscape. They're F-range SKUs. And what these do is they provide an increasing number of capacity units. And a capacity unit is just a metric that Microsoft are using to kind of abstract and summarize the amount of compute power. And you can go from F2 all the way up to F2048. We haven't yet got pricing for any of this. That isn't being published at the moment.
Yeah.
But the idea is that if you've got lots that you need to do, then you're going to need an F2048. If you just want to dabble, if you just want to play, you can do an F2. And of course, there are 10 gradations between those two extremes. And the beauty of using the capacity model is that you can scale up as you need. So you can start small, you can prove the value, and then as you start to prove the value, other people get involved in it, and you can jump up to an F4. There is no long-term commit to any individual capacity. You can ramp it up, you can ramp it back down if you go too far, and that is a really nice, flexible model that Microsoft have given. Now, each capacity also needs some user-based licensing. And there's two different types of user-based individual licensing. You've got free, and that allows you to utilize the capacity to create non-Power BI artifacts. So the Synapse usage, the Data Factory usage, when it finally arrives, the Data Activator usage. These are available at no additional cost above the capacity to free users. But if you're wanting to use Power BI, you are going to need at least one pro individual license provisioned for your organization as well. So that's the two kind of key license models. Again, to answer some of Andy's question, there is a way to leverage the M365 licensing for Power BI. If you are already paying for Power BI using your Microsoft 365 subscription, that doesn't go away with Fabric. You can still leverage that and bring that into your Fabric workspace alongside a capacity subscription that you would need to set up. But you can't pay for that capacity through Microsoft 365. If you want to use the other elements of Fabric, if you want to use those Synapse, Data Factory, Data Activator, all of those bits of Fabric that are not Power BI, then you're going to need an Azure subscription, and you're going to need to provision that capacity subscription, which again sounds like a bit of a faff, but one of the benefits of that Azure subscription model, as we've already said, is that it gives you pay as you go. It allows you to do consumption-based billing. It allows you to flex between the different SKUs. It allows you to pause and resume as well. You can pause your use of Fabric, not pay for it, and then when you need it again, unpause it, resume it, and start paying just for what you're using. So this is, I think, the way Microsoft want to drive these things going forward. But it's all a little bit mute at the minute because, as I say, there's no pricing, and everything is currently released under a free trial. So you can sign up for a free trial to Fabric, start playing around, and start to see for yourself how Fabric will be able to benefit your organization.
Yeah, licensing has always been one of the weak areas, I would rather say, because it becomes too complex when there are so many different teams and different layers of people involved. Some of them who do development, some of them are on the administration side, and then you have the users who use them. And you had your Azure, and then your capacity or consumption-based pricing. Now you have your capacity-based pricing, and you're also now integrated with Microsoft 365. So you also have that level of licensing available. uh, it can become a bit of complicated
Hmm.
for other people to understand, but we don't have a lot of clarity yet. We'll look forward to seeing more on that, and when we do, we would certainly put out some more thoughts around the licensing.
I think the one thing we can say at the moment is that although if particularly if you're an existing Power BI through Microsoft 365, it feels like, well, here's another thing I've got to worry about.
Yeah,
It's giving you a whole load of stuff, and all you have to worry about is a single SKU, rather than, well, what do I need for Synapse? What do I need for Data Factory? What do I
yeah,
need to do for Purview and any of the other data analytics tools that we talked about right at the start? You don't have to understand the different pricing models for these things. It's a single pricing model, and you just need to worry about how much do I need.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Eventually, we can see it would be streamlined for the end users, for the actual enterprise customers. It would be much more streamlined billing, because now they're looking at one billing. It
Hmm.
may have multiple services within them, but you're looking at one billing.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully that would get more streamlined as we go forward. uh, that's really good info on the licensing, because yeah, it can be really confusing. Thanks, John. uh, how about the shortcuts? Have you guys, what do you guys think of shortcuts, where you don't have to really connect the services or data, or get the data? You can simply create shortcuts and start connecting.
Yeah, so shortcuts, I think it's another way to get the data without moving the data.
Hmm.
And uh, the thing is, like, it provide connectors to different I will say the storage across different clouds, uh, whether it is Azure or AWS or Google. You connect to the data source, visualize data virtually without the movement. And the another good part of the data, like I just want to add with the connector, is you can move the files, you can save the files using the native Windows Explorer feature on one computer, and you can log in on your another device where you can browse the same data, or you can update or modify the data. So connectors and this native support for with Windows Explorer is really wonderful.
Mm.
And on top of that, Microsoft Fabric, Microsoft has adopted a open format. Uh, I will say the structure that is called the Parquet. That's really bring standardization across all the services to use the standardized data, same format, and that add a compression features to it, so it's more efficient to use across all these services.
Yeah, I think Andy raises a good point about security. His My fear with One Lake, I'll take the edited version of the comment. My fear with One Lake is that it will need to ensure the security of the data, and that is absolutely a valid concern, especially when you're starting to expose shortcuts to and kind of Windows Explorer integration for people. Um, and I personally haven't seen Microsoft's response to this yet, but given what they've done with Dataverse, the model for Dataverse is incredibly granular and allows you to implement even field level role
Yeah,
based and user access controls
yeah,
on the data that you're storing in Dataverse. Um, would you guys say that it's probably safe to assume that that
yeah.
will be the
It's
case
coming
here
more.
as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I've seen some examples where if you had configured that row level or column level security with
Mm,
RBAC controls, it with Dataverse or Power BI, right? If you access those data with Microsoft Excel, all of those level of security still carries over in the Excel,
mm,
right? So I'm assuming it would be pretty much same, but I don't know how it would be implemented, because if I'm as a user, if I'm not allowed to look into a particular column, if I have access using my Windows File Explorer, how would that stop me
mm.
from not looking at that. So the implementation of that remains to see,
Yeah.
uh, because you will have hundreds of people in your team, and obviously, if you don't want everyone to see every data, or a lot
Yeah.
of that is why you have all this control with
Yeah.
Dataverse and Power BI.
Again, I guess similar to pricing, you're bringing everything under a single product, for lack of a better term, and you only have to worry about one cost. I think the same rings true for governing access to the different data services that you're running. In an Azure world, you have to provision access. You can do it at subscription level if you want, maybe at resource group level or individual service level. And if you've chosen to provision access at the service level, and actually, even if you've done it at the resource group or subscription level, because you can have multiple subscriptions, multiple resource groups, there is a danger that you might over provision access, or you might forget that you provisioned someone access and then they move on to a new role within the same organization,
Right.
and they've still got access to this service, this data, this insight that they probably shouldn't have access to anymore. And I think with Fabric, pulling that under a single service, there are fewer places to forget that
Or
you've
make
given someone
changes.
access.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, that unified governance and security would be a big help.
Yeah,
Certainly, that we can clearly see. Rather than providing it 7 different levels of access, you now have to worry about one.
yeah.
Excellent. Any other points you guys think? Anything that brought your attention?
I think for me, I've enjoyed the conversation and really
Yeah.
excited to see what's coming down the line,
Excellent. Excellent.
especially with Data Activator. I think that has got,
Yeah.
if you combine that with other solutions that we deliver, be it an application innovation type of solution, which is generating the data that's going to be activated, or
Yeah.
maybe an integration solution that is transmitting that data so that it become available to Data Activator, that really does become a potential game changer for automating responses to insight. Really
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah. What do you think?
and
Uh,
and it will also add a level of interactions, like interactive, like if there's
Yeah,
any anomalies, you get the alert, just quickly fix it, it's all good. Yeah.
yeah. One of the a funny question, or I mean, in the social media, what we're seeing lately is that, okay, if AI is coming to do everything, would I be jobless if I'm a Power BI developer?
yep,
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Everyone would still need those amazing developers, but instead of writing that mundane line of codes, you would be doing much better job using the AI. Your efficiency would be much more increased. You would be delivering great solutions.
yeah,
My same question was there in 80s and 90s when computers start coming everywhere.
Yeah,
hmm
With the introduction of computer, people is going to lose their jobs, but to be honest, it increased the jobs. So
yeah,
Oh, there's a whole other debate, but
yeah,
yeah, it certainly has increased certain jobs, and I think what it's done is it's raised the level of the jobs that need to be done. It's, you can't deny that IT and technology will have removed certain types of job or made them slightly more scarce. I think
yeah,
in the UK at least, it's generally speaking turned us into a services industry rather than a manufacturing industry.
yeah,
But it has opened up, yeah, as you say, whole new opportunities for new types of job. And even now, I can seeing people talk about, we've got a role for an AI prompt writer, come and work for us. So that's a role that didn't even exist 6 months ago, let alone kind of 6 years ago. So there's all
yeah,
sorts of new stuff that's coming.
yeah, yeah. I mean, every organization on this planet right now wants to implement AI,
Mm,
but even though we have so many new tools and services available, they would still need the experts who would help them,
yeah.
first of all, identify the opportunity where you should use AI, where it makes sense to use AI. Do you really have enough data to even start building the models so that you can build AI?
Mm,
And one of the applications that we've recently delivered, the for NHS 24, right? You want to quickly talk about that, John? That's because it has already used a lot of these new features. I mean, not the analytics side of things, but the AI, definitely.
Yeah, so for those that aren't aware, maybe not have seen some of the announcements we've put out, one of our recent projects is for NHS 24. We've built for them a chatbot interface to their self-help guides. So if someone downloads the app, they've got a concern, maybe their back's hurting them or they've got an eye problem, they can go in, they can interact with the bot, and the bot will follow a process, follow the knowledge base that's available, and enable them to say, okay, well, I probably need to go to 999 because my eye isn't just hurting, there's blood pouring out of it. No,
Yeah,
I'm doing an extreme example. But what it also does is signpost to other services. Here's a pharmacy. You just need to go and get this sort of treatment. Do you want to know where your nearest pharmacist is? So it will then ask for what your postcode or your location, and it will signpost you to there without having to talk to the 111 team. Now, the 111 team is still there. They're still available to do that kind of next level of triage and signposting that the chatbot isn't able to help with. But what it's doing is it's easing the burden on that, so that rather than
yeah,
waiting in line on a phone call queue for 30 minutes. Well, that's what I've experienced south of the border anyway. Let's not talk about north of the border. But instead of waiting in a call queue, you can get that answer that you need and let the call queue be for those that really need to speak to a more specialist person rather than the more routine things that something like AI and chatbots can help you with.
yeah. We have a really good comment from Rachit. To replace programmers with AI, clients will need to accurately describe what they want. So we are safe.
It's true.
Well, yeah, it's there are many different roles, and one of them is understanding clients' requirements. Because a lot of times we know that we would start when we are being asked to do something by clients. They, instead of asking the final result, they would start asking us to actually how to do it, and that is where our expertise come into the play, right? That okay, let us understand your problem and then let us offer you multiple solutions,
Mm.
because they may have developed some knowledge of technology. They definitely have a lot of knowledge of their process, but the knowledge of technology may, I'm not necessarily saying be limited, but there might be so many different options, and that's why, yeah, Rachit, we are certainly safe. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
um, well, thank you very much, John and Abhishek, for your time. It was
Thank you.
really nice talking about this new fancy terms and technologies that's coming out every year. It doesn't stop surprising us every year. We see some or the other new things.
Mm.
And if I can go back to sharing my screen very briefly. So, as your next steps, if you found that Fabric is something you want to give it a try, you can start your free trial by going to fabric.microsoft.com. But if your organization thinks that you want to know more about it before you can start implementing, right? Or if you need any expert help, we at Cluster Reply have many experts who work very closely with Microsoft, even for many technologies which is not yet out in the public. And we have over 2 decades of experience working with many different industries and clients and services. So if you think you need any help, we can do a detailed workshop with you on a with your organization to understand your needs, and can guide you, can advise you whether you need Microsoft Fabric or some of the other services are good candidates for you. So if you think you need any help, we are here. You can reach out to us at digital.cluster.uk at reply.com, and we'd be in touch, and we'd be happy to do some workshop with you guys. And last but not least, thank you very much for spending your time. It's a great weather. It's Thursday, almost end of the week. You may have 100 other things to do, but you spend your time 1 hour with us. We really appreciate that. Here is a QR code. If you can take out your phone scan it. It just has 5 very quick questions, should take you less than a minute. And if you can give us your feedback on this workshop, that would really help us improvise next time. So if I can request all of you, please take out your phone, scan the QR code on your screen, and give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. Let us know if you would want to know know more about any other services or any other topics in future as we continue to do such workshops. Thank you very much once again, and hopefully we'll see you in the next workshop. Have a nice day.
Okay.
Thank you.